Hey guys, this is Mr. Excitement, Mike Howerton back here at Area 51, and we are cutting part 3 of our MoTec video series where we are teaching you guys how to install MoTec and and get it configured. We have worked very hard to get you guys a workbook that has both a driver development section in the workbook and also has a complete setup section in it. We have got that narrowed down to a very concise, usable format for all you guys out there that are working on your driving and also building setups. And this is the final part. We're going to focus on how to use MoTec to get your setups working correctly in iRacing, how to get your setups faster, how to make it better on the long run, and really tune up your setups in iRacing. And so we are going to get right into the video without spending any other time on the intro. We have the Admiral Tracy Rumschlag here with us, and he is going to walk us through walk us through the process. How you doing tonight, Admiral?
Hey, I'm doing good. Hey, here's what we want to do, Mike, on this. So we've had the videos in the past about how to set up the B car, how to set up the C truck. And if you haven't watched those, you might want to go watch those first before we get into this, because this is the second part that complements how to know, what part of the truck or what part of the B car. And that's what we're going to get into now is what I look at when we go to do setups for you. Okay. So when you throw me a setup, you go, hey, what does this look like? This is what I'm looking at. Okay. And this new book that you've put out is going to help a lot of people. It's simplistic, but it's very thorough. And that's the part I like about it. This is just a segment of the book that I work out of. Okay. So let me share my screen and we'll start with on this particular worksheet. And hopefully you guys can see it. Now, what I did here is this week we're at Kansas. And what I did is I took the iRacing Open setup, their version of an open setup. And you can do this as well, because usually they're not too far off. But what we're looking at here is the front splitter. And this is of the truck, the C Open truck. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the center splitter and then both edges of it, or both sides of it, the left side and the right side. The idea is to get it as low as I can without actually hitting the track. And the reason being is if I hit the track, then what's happening is it's unloading the corner, or the tires in the corner. And what'll happen is it won't drive, you won't drive it, it'll drive you basically. And usually it's up to the wall and nothing ever good comes about that. So what we want to do is try to set it so it's just the least amount off the track without actually hitting it. That's the ultimate goal. And that's what this book offers. And that's what this page offers. So what we can do is we can see, and where we normally set this is in the middle part of the corners. Okay. So what I do is I left click and I bring up my cursor. Okay. And that tells me what part of the track I'm on. And I can tell up here in this index up here, turn 1, turn 2, back straightaway. Okay. Turn 3, turn 4. But what I want to do, where the most load is on the track, which is usually the center part of the corner, I want to put my cursor there as close as I can, and it'll give me values here. And that's these on the left-hand side. So you notice that the CFS ride height, which is center front splitter ride height, and it's in inches, is at 3/10. Now, two things I'm looking for is A, is it off the track? In this case, it's off 3/10 of an inch. And secondly, is it level? Okay, and I try to get it as level as I can because that's the most amount of speed. If we have the left side at the track and the right side above the track, then all kinds of air is going to get under it, and you won't handle, and you won't be as fast as if it was sealed. Okay, now you don't, like I say, once again, you don't want it on the track because then that just upsets everything on it. So you do want to be above it. But that's what these channels indicate as the splitters. And this works for the truck and the B car. Okay, the A car is a different animal. There's some different stuff in that. We can discuss that later down the road when people get more advanced, or the advanced people want to learn a little more. We can get into that. But right now we're just going to do B and C. And this also works on like the super late models, that kind of stuff. But they don't have the splitter. They have more of a I think they call it a valence that's on the front of those cars. So it's a little different. But if you go by the center ride height, it takes that in consideration as well. So there's areas that works. Now, so the splitter I want to try to, like I say, get as low as possible and level as possible, which this one here is. And like I said, I'm not taking credit for the setup. This is iRacing setup, and they have it in their share box. Just get it, start with that. That's a great place to start if you want to learn how to do this stuff. Down here at the bottom, this is more for validation, okay? These are the ride heights, front right, front left, but what it really amounts to is they're the frame heights, okay? The top is the like I said, the splitter, the bottom is the frame heights. So if the top splitter is level, then theoretically these frame heights should be level. And it's just a way that I use to verify those readings, okay? And we do have the front and the back. Hopefully your chassis is not twisted, or if it's twisted, it's not twisted too much, and the rear end will do the same. And that's what you see. And then this is an entire lap. So these are the sensors that are placed on the actual area that we're dealing with, and that shows you the entire lap and what that particular part of the car did. Okay, obviously lower the better. You don't want to be sucking big heaviest amounts of air going down the straightaway. So you'll notice the right side here on the splitter is very low going through the corners, and you can see where we come out of the corner. Well, the reason it comes up like that is because the truck unloads a little bit. The chassis unloads, so it comes up a little bit. And this is on a small scale. It's only like 5 inches. So that's why it looks like it's pronounced as much as it is. But in reality, we went from 3/10 of an inch to an inch and a half, 1.6. Okay, so if you want to know what the scale is, that's where we're at right there. But that's what this page gives you. And like I said, I just gave you the theory on it.
So Tracy, I want to point out too that like, so when somebody who's new to setup building, and one thing that like I noticed when you and I were going over this stuff originally, and I was learning MoTec some, is that, you know, like, so in the garage, whatever somebody goes and looks up the setup videos, like what they need to do before they get into this, we're talking about static ride heights in the garage, like the ride heights in the garage, and they got to pass tech. They got to be a certain level and stuff. And then we talk about the front shocks, the rear shock and spring packages, and the B car use Packers. I'm not sure in the truck which one it is, but the point is that all the combination of all that, when you get out on the track, iRacing does not tell you what we call the dynamic ride heights, like the ride heights while the car is actually moving on the track.
Yes.
So in iRacing, you can do you can set up all the static ride heights and what it is before you hit the gas and drive out on the track. But this gives you the data of what the ride heights are once you're out on the track. And then now, you know, if you say, oh, I'm hitting the splitter on the ground to cut, you know, like it's barely hitting in one of these turns, what do I do? Well, one thing you do is go put a couple Packers in it or something of that nature, try to keep it from hitting the track. So yeah, this is your dynamic ride heights that you cannot get out of iRacing. MoTec or something like this is the only place where you can get that dynamic ride height information.
If you're going to do open sets and be fast, this is what you're going to need. And you call them dynamic, which they are dynamic. I call them race heights. And the reason I say that is because the car is up to speed, it's under full load. This is what I refer to as race heights. So if you hear me say that, this is what I'm referring to. And you're exactly right. So this being the truck, we don't have Packers on the truck for people trying to understand that. We have what's known as a coil bind. And what they do there is they take a real soft spring and they compress it. And it only goes so far depending on how soft a spring it is. And once again, go back to the truck video, watch that. I go into great detail on that. And it explains how to use certain springs, certain heights to get this coil bind. But the end result, we're looking for the center splitter to get right above the level of the track and stay there. That's what we want it to do. We want it to ride right at that level. Okay. We don't want it crashing into anything, as in bottoming out, going through, irregularities or holes or dips and whatever in the track, whatever the characteristics are. Sometimes you have to set them for like a bumpy track. Let's use Rockingham. I couldn't run these heights at Rockingham. I would be snow plowing all over the place because the place is so rough. So that 3/10 may become 5/10, which is a half inch. It may become a little more than that. It may be 3/4 of an inch, but we have to keep the splitter off the track. iRacing doesn't want it on there. And if you do have it on there, it penalizes you. You might run some fast laps up front, but I guarantee you after lap 10, you'll have nothing. And you'll probably have so much wheel in it, you'll never get the car to cut or the truck to cut. But yeah, that's what this is. These are dynamic heights, or I like to call them as race heights. And that's as everything's in motion, under load. This is a snapshot of that particular picture of an entire lap. Okay?
And Trace, before you go to the next tab, show them up in the top left-hand corner how you switch between the driver development section and the setup section, so they know they're in the upper left-hand part of the page.
It's the gray tab here. It's got a pull-down arrow. Just left click on it, and it has the two areas in it. So I'm in the bottom one right now. It says setup info, but we also use this driver info, and you just click on it and it'll change it. So here's where we left off on the previous video. And if I want to go back, just use a drop down, go to setup info, and I'm right back at the channel, or the sheet that I just stopped work, the worksheet that I wasn't working on, or that I'm working on. So anyways, so that's how you get between the two. Like I said, it's fairly simple, but if you don't know, you don't know. I get it. So that's our regular splitter page. And the reason it's number one is because that's probably going to be your most used worksheet. So the second one is splitter A. This is a little more in depth. Okay, it offers more information. You can, it's self-explanatory at the top, I hope. You'll notice here at the right, the way this is designed is I have color coded for those particular channels, and if you look down here in the bottom, those colors are also applied on the trace. So you have a digital readout up here in the upper right, and then you have the trace value down here on the left. So depending on what you like looking at. The reason I have these values, these digital values on the upper right, was so when I'm sharing my screen with somebody, if I'm working or co-oping with a team or helping somebody out, they can see the values that I'm looking at without having to look at the squiggly lines. That's the only reason it's there. So it just backs up what we're already looking at. So what we normally work out of here in the bottom, and you'll notice our track too. I always say we try to go right in between both corners, right? 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 to set up our truck, in this particular case, our chassis. So you'll notice the cursor is in the middle. It's right at the center. So you can drag it and drop that little dot, that little cursor, or you can come and use my header up here where the index is and just put it in between two. Either works, doesn't matter. But what we're getting into now, once again, is the frame heights. And once again, like I said, everything's color coordinated, so you can see what side is what. And all this does is back up what the previous page was, basically. We want both of these lines on top of each other as for as long as we can get. In a perfect world, they'd never come off, but this is iRacing, and in the real world, you have different irregularities. We try to get them as close as physically possible. So your splitter readout, your splitter page, or trace is here in the purple, the magenta color, and that's also trying to get as close to this red line. We've highlighted the 0 line, which is the track, in red, and you try to get the pink line to that as close as possible. But you'll notice that as you go over bumps and stuff, you get these spikes, okay, and you got to take that in consideration because that's running it into the track. And that's not what we want. We're going to try to keep it off the track as much as possible for as long as possible. And like I said, this is an entire lap, okay? And the last one that we have here is the rake setting, rake being the difference between the rear ride height and the front ride height. And you want it a little higher in the top and in the back end as the chassis compresses in the corner. And the reason being is it keeps the splitter down longer. Okay, you don't want to lose rake where you're into a negative value, because that's called porpoising. And then what happens is you leave a bigger opening up front. The air goes under the truck or under the car instead of over the car. Over the car means pushing down aerodynamics. Under the car, you're porpoising. It's wanting to lift. You gain lift. And usually then that defeats the purpose. That's what we're trying to put this line here to show where that may be in relationship to everything else, okay? There's more of a science to it. If you really want to know the numbers, go over here to the right where it says average front ride height, average rear ride height. As long as the rear is higher than the front, you should be okay, okay? That's the best way I can do for people that are just learning. I wouldn't spend too much time on this right now. We just know we don't want the rear lower than the front, okay? Anyhow, so like I said, there's a lot of stuff here that's self-explanatory. I'm not going to highlight it all. You guys probably figured out. And let's see, what's the next one? Splitter in motion, okay? So what we have is we have the left front splitter and the right front splitter. And how this works is the track color is blue, okay? And if you're actually hitting the track, then it changes color. And then it'll tell you, okay? And that's where this little red indicator is. That means that's a strike to the track. That means the left front just went over a bump. There might be a bump there because there's no other taps around the track, or you'd have a whole series of red little taps going around if it was too low. And then that's telling you want to raise it. But in this particular,
And Tracy, I've had people give me setups before. Say, hey, can you check this out? And I run it through MoTec, and there's a whole lot of red right here in this
Yes.
one, where their front splitters just slamming against the track. So
Yeah.
this one from iRacing has done a pretty good job. Of course, it did. Them putting out a stable base set. Of course, it's not slamming over the track everywhere. But yes, I have seen them where they
Yes.
slam. There's all kind of red on the screen.
And it'll show you what part of the track too. So if certain part of the track's more rough than another, you're going to see where it starts tapping. And once again, it's a trade-off, right? So do you give up most of the lap to compensate for that part of the track, or do you make it, do you make it right all the way around, something like that? So you just got to be careful. It's trial and error. Look at the lap times, see how uncomfortable it is to drive. And that's where we come back asking you questions. How does it drive? Is it pushing? If it's pushing, it might be on the splitter, and this is the page it's going to tell you. Okay, so that's why this is here. Other than that, I can't tell you too much more because that's the part of the.
I've got one more here too. Is don't just do a short run, do a long run. Look and see 20, 30 laps in if you're hitting the splitter any using this graph, because what you'll find sometimes is after 20 laps or 25 laps, it'll be 30 laps, 3/4 away through a fuel run, you might find that that's when you really start hitting and you're starting to push. You're going into a turn and you're pushing up the track and you don't know why. Well, the reason is you burn off fuel, your back end's raised up, and that pushed your front end down, and now your front end's hitting into the track. So anyway, this is a great page to go even turn your telemetry on and run it during a race. If you got a 90 lap race,
Yes.
turn on telemetry, run it through the whole race, and that way you can see, if you're going to pit on lap 45 halfway through the race, you can see on lap 40 if you're hitting the split or not. If you're getting pushing tight, that might be the reason why. So that this page can be very helpful in giving you a graphical representation of exactly where on the track that's happening.
That's an excellent analogy, because a lot of times if you try to set the splitter too perfect on the first lap, Mike's exactly right. As the fuel comes out and the springs start uncompressing a little bit, that raises that rear end up. Well, the front end's got to go down. That's what happens. One end goes up, one end goes down. And if you have that splitter a little too perfect, you'll run it into the track where it starts tapping. And then all of a sudden you'll be saying, hey, my car gets tight in the later part of the run. Well, if that's the case, look at that. And then you'll just, sometimes it's a trade-off, like we say. So you might have to run it up just like 1/4 inch higher or an 1/8 inch higher, just to kind of compensate for that later part of the run. If you're doing just a qualifying run, well, obviously you want to get as low as you can and have at it. But for the race runs, it's a whole different mentality.
Yep. Just turn that telemetry on, run your whole race, come back here, load up that telemetry file, and go to this sheet, and it will tell you. It won't lie. It'll tell you if you're knocking the track with that splitter later in the run.
Right. Okay. So the next worksheet we have is a skirt height. Okay. And then there's a rollover. That's what these dials are here, is the chassis itself rolling one way or another. There's a front rollover, there's a rear rollover, and then there's a downforce, which is the G's on it. And these bar graphs are basically different areas of the chassis or the front splitter that the sensors are on. And that's what this telemetry is reading right here, is how much, how little, is it level? And like I said, you'll look at it and you'll figure it out. It's nothing that you can't figure out. I'm trying to figure it out because I want to get it working for you. So I'm just going to hit the animation. But so you can see in this animation, nothing is stable, right? It's always working the entire lap. That's why we say don't worry about trying to not get perfection, because you want it in the corners. That's where the most stability is. That's where most speed is in the corners. Okay. If you're fast in the corners, I guarantee you'll be fast on the straightaways, but that's not vice versa. Just because you're fast on the straightaway does not mean you're fast in the corners. So we're always working on the corners. And what you have is you have ride heights and skirt heights. Now the skirts are the side panels that run underneath the car itself, right along the edges, right? And that's the thing we want to try to get as low as we can, because that's what seals the air off. We want the air going around the car and over the car on the B car and the C truck. That's what creates downforce, okay? If you're getting air under the car, that's called lift. That's more like an airplane. That's what we want to avoid. So the more you can keep it down in the corners and the overall lap, the faster you'll be. And that's all this offers. There's no real point in breaking down each individual channel. It's just different data on different parts or different corners of the car. Some of them are on the skirts, some of them are on the frame heights. and the front is on the splitter. What you see up here is the splitter. So we have splitter heights, frame heights, and skirt heights. Okay. So let me shut this animation off. And then from here, we can go into our shocks or dampers, whatever you refer to them as. Now this looks like madness, but in reality, we call it a histogram. If you give me a second, I'll explain it to you. Hang on just a second. Sorry about that. Anyways, so what you do is you bring up a lap. The idea here is you want these graphs to equal a pyramid, as smooth as you can be. And the reason you do it like that is that's the shock working in different parts of the track. And if we can get that shock value to be what's known as linear, and linear meaning that it's the same shock speed both in bump and rebound, the better off it'll be. Okay. Now that shock speed doesn't have an exact value. It has to do with the car, the feel of the car itself. If there's not enough dampening, it could be linear, but if it moves up and down too quick, it'll just bounce over everything. If the shock's too stiff, then it works completely the opposite. Now all of a sudden the tires become the suspension, not the suspension, because the shocks made it too slow. And you'll see a difference, but these averages is what you're interested in. Okay, these average speeds. Now this says 0.6. Okay, I don't really care about the exact value, more as I do is it the same in the rebound side and the bump side. And this is one particular lap. So sometimes when I look at these, we want an average. So if we want to smooth it out, we look at a variety of laps. So I try to do anywhere from 3 solid to 5 solid laps. And what I'm doing is I'm up here at the top, and I've taken the green cursor, the green box that goes around that particular lap that you have highlighted, and I grabbed and left clicked the left or the right edge and drug it out, in this particular case, all the way to lap 5. So that gives me a 5 lap average of what the actual damper or shock is doing. Okay. And the reason is this is important is because of this average speed. If the value is too high, then it's too fast. So then what happens is it'd be like a car on a say a regular road car. If the shocks are used up and need replaced, what happens is it goes over a bump and the spring keeps going up and down, up and down, up and down, because there's nothing controlling that spring. Okay. Well, that's what the shock does. It controls the oscillations of that spring as it goes through what they call bump and rebound, which is obviously compression and rebound. And by controlling that, we don't want that bouncing effect. We want to try to get it to absorb whatever and keep moving on down the road, keep that tire down there. But if you're too stiff, that tire won't do that. And what'll happen is it'll just ram through the bump, and all of a sudden it upsets the car. Next thing you know, the driver's screaming at you that he can't hold on to it. It's all over the track, won't drive straight. Well, this is where we look for that. Now, there's no real science to it in iRacing. It's pretty cut and dry. All those fancy numbers that you see in the garage, basic, I always call it artwork. I know they serve a purpose, but the values mean really nothing. But when you dig into MoTec, this is where those numbers will apply. This is where you really want to concentrate on what those values are. Okay. And the more consistent and balanced those numbers are in terms of these averages, the more consistent your car will be. Okay.
Yeah, Tracy, about 6 months ago, iRacing, when they brought the next gen car out, they updated some of the settings in the B car and the C truck. And they give us the what was it, the high speed and low speed compression,
Yes.
rebound stuff.
Yes.
And I don't remember all the details, but maybe you can fill everybody in, like which settings in the garage correspond to what we're looking at on the screen.
Okay, this is for the truck. So first off, let me grab a piece of data from the new car, and then we're going to get into the next tab, and that should explain it a little better. So if you give me just a second, let me dig up the next gen run. And that should be, here's a 10 lap run. Let's see if this is it. Yeah.
Hey, as Tracy's doing this, I want to explain something here. In iRacing, or not in iRacing, but in MoTec, the the value that's used to calculate these two graphs, these two histograms, are different for the next gen car as they are for the truck and the B car. The truck and B car use some damper settings in order to calculate it. And then with the next gen cars, we have to use some shock velocity values. So if you look across the top, there are two sets of tabs. Tab number 5 says shock bump rebound. Tab number 6 says shock velocity. But 7 and 8 are the same things. The only difference is they say next gen. They're identical. They're identical screens, but with the next gen, when you have to use the ones labeled next gen, and for everything that's not next gen, you in oval that is, you would use the ones that are not labeled next gen. So it's self-explanatory, but just the way that the sensors and the way they're done, we had to create separate tabs for the next gen cars, but it displays the exact same information. So go ahead, Trace.
Yeah. Okay. So I was on tab 5. I'm going to skip 6 because that correlates with tab 5, but we're on a different car now. So I'm going to go to 7, which is basically the same thing as 5, but just for this particular car, which is the A car, the next gen car. So now the first thing you have to understand on these new next gen cars is there's different shock settings. Okay. There's basically 6 of them. You have high speed, and then you have a low speed compression, or it may be compression, or it may be under bump. I think it might be compression. And then you have a slope setting, SLOPE, slope. Now the slope setting is what does the major amount of work. So if you're trying to learn the shocks, and don't do onesies, okay? You're going to waste time by doing onesies. What you want to do is you want to go in like five values, because it's from 1 to 10 is what it amounts to, those shock values. So if you're trying to adjust the shock, just try using the slope values first. And once you get your slope values close, then you can go back to the individual settings, whether it be high speed bump, low speed bump, high speed rebound, low speed rebound, and then, like I say, your slope setting. So there's 6 settings for each shock, bumps and rebounds, 3 each on each side. But like I said, if you're trying to primarily rough them in, just use your slope settings. When I usually test a car, in order for me to see what it looks like in MoTec, I'll set everything to 1 and go out there, because 1 is the softest setting, and I can actually see how everything works. And then the next one I'll do is a 5, only on the slopes. I leave everything else at 1, go 5 on the bump slope, and 5, or compression slope, and 5 on the rebound slope. I'll do like 5 laps and record that data, come in like I showed you, highlight all 5 laps, and look at what those bar graph looks like. What does it look like? And do 10, and then look at your average speed values. And this is like 1.09 inches per second. Okay, so that's pretty fast, but what it's telling you is it's controlling that within 1 inch, and that's what we want. We want to try to, you'll find out what value that is that gives you the best looking graph. And once you find that, you'll just try to keep it in there in iRacing, and it usually gives you the best results. Anyways, so let's look at this left front, because this thing looks all goofy. Okay, so the inner values both say low, and if you notice, the right side over here says bump. So this is the low speed bump, and that's in this gray area here. Okay, then you'll see in the black area there's a high speed bump. Okay, and that's this outer portion here. High speed meaning your shock speeds, you were going over a bump, something that took that shock shaft and moved it a lot of in terms of how much. And if you go down here at the bottom and you want to know exactly what it is, it's basically set up to almost 5 inches. So you'll have 1 inch. So everything from 0 to 1 inch is your low speed, and everything from 1 inch to 5 inches becomes your high speed setting. And I know that sounds a little confusing. Once you look at it, you'll have a better idea of what it actually looks like, and probably understand it a little more. Ideally, the backs you want to look kind of like this right rear. Okay, and then you start looking at the numbers. The ideal setting here in a perfect world would be 25%. So that means that in the rebound side, you have 25% of the time you have the shock operating in that area. The low speed rebound would be 25% here, low speed bump 25% here, and the high speed bump would be 25. That would be ideal because that's 100% total. These shock shaft speeds are just a value. Usually, if these values on the low side are above 25%, that's too stiff, okay? And you'll notice it because this average is below 1 inch, okay? So if we go up here, where it says 27% on the low, here we go, 1.09 inches. So this is fairly close. So I think everything's based around an inch. That's just figurative. Like I said, you're going to have to work with it, see what feels the best. I don't think in iRacing 1 click means a whole heck of a lot. I think you're going to have to use either 1, 5, or 10 as the values, but that's personal preference. But anyhow, this is what we use to go find those values and what we like. It's not really set and forget in the game, but usually you don't have to do but maybe more than 1 or 2 clicks once you find the sweet spot and what those shock shaft values are. So anyhow, that's what this section is in reference to. And like I said, it's on a bar graph, and the perfect bar graph would be with the peak being right at the middle, because the middle is 0. That would be like you sitting on pit road. There's no movement at all. But at the further left or the further right you go, that's all the way out to 5 inches of travel. And that could be 5 inches per second. And that's a pretty soft shock if you're into that. So anyway, so that's how that is explained. And then the shock velocity, same basic deal here, but it's just in a trace. And that's anything above it's in the bump, and anything below it's in the rebound. And then you can come over here and see your values. Okay. That's how we do that. And once again, if you keep the low value, the lowest value and the highest value close, your shock will come out pretty good. We won't be too bad for you. So, and this is each individual corner. You got the left side rear, left side front. You got the right front and the right rear. And that pretty much covers that, Mike. So I'm going to give it back to you unless you got anything else.
Yeah, Trace, appreciate that. Just want to remind everybody, though, that like I said, with the next gen car, things are slightly different. So tabs 5 and 6 and 7 or 8 are repeats. Just depends on which car you're on. So just wanted you guys to remember that as you're going through that book. But Tracy, you walked us through it perfectly. We really appreciate it. I think you'll spend most of your time there in the first couple of pages, and then as you get on into the shock pages and stuff towards the end of the book. But really, I tried to get all the clutter out of that book for you guys and get something really detailed, but really simplified and concise that you could use. And this is going to be my primary book that I'm working out of. I'm not giving you guys an inferior book to what I am going to be working out of. This is going to be the book I work out of. And Trace did a great job of going through that. Remember, go back, watch the setup videos. If you have not done so yet, you need to watch those setup videos. That goes over all the stuff in the garage. And this is kind of the next level of building your setup. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. This wraps up our 3-part series on MoTec. If at any point in time you guys get some detailed questions, and several people have questions and topics they'd like us to cover, we can go back in and do a more advanced series in MoTec as well. But this is our introduction to MoTec, our 3-part series. We completed it tonight. We really hope you guys have enjoyed this and you've learned a lot from it. And we hope that you can keep coming back to these videos and to MoTec to help further along your driving ability in iRacing, and your setup building for your team and for yourself here as you move forward through the Oval Series as an iRacing. If you have not done so yet, just ask you to go down, hit that subscribe button right below the video. That helps out our channel grow, and we are growing right now. We appreciate all the channel growth you guys give us. There's also a bell icon down there where you can get notified anytime we go live with any of our live streams, our podcast Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and our broadcast of the Monday night Strength to Field race for Xfinity Open, and all the great on-demand content, just like you're watching right now. You will get notified of all that if you hit that bell icon below the video. Also, down below the video in the description, we have all kind of cool stuff down there. Of course, there is the links to download MoTec, to download Mew, and to download the workbook that we've been working out of in this video. Check out those links down below. There's also some great links. There's an affiliate link down there to Major's Garage. You can also get free baseline setups from Majors Garage. There's also 2 other sites for great free setups. One is osracing.net. It's community supported. People in the community upload setups that then you can download. And also there's Edwards Setup Shop down there. They're not a for-pay setup shop at all. Everything that they offer is 100% free. You go to their website, which is linked down below, and you can click a link to get into their Discord. They have a 2,600 member Discord there, where they give help to each other, feedback. They offer setups. Everything they offer there is 100% free and supported by their community. So check that out as well. There's also a promo code down there for 10% off at Maconi Setup Shop. When you make your purchases there and use the promo code Area 51, all one word, no space, at Maconi Setup Shop gets you, our viewers and subscribers, 10% off when shopping and purchasing setups at Maconi Setup Shop. So all kind of cool goodies down in the description for you guys. So always check out the description at the bottom of our videos after you've watched a video. You'll never know what you'll find down there. All kind of great stuff for you. Guys, that's all we've got as we wrap up this great 3-part series on MoTec in our introduction to MoTec here at Area 51. And also, yeah, I really hope you guys enjoy that workbook. I myself put in tons of hours into it. Tracy put some time into it with me, several hours with me, helping me figure out a couple of the maths on one of those pages and stuff there towards the end, plus all kind of other help he's given me on it. We really put a lot of time and effort into that workbook, and we really hope that you guys find it useful, not just now, but in years to come, as you continue in iRacing, that you can find that workbook helpful. And if we ever put out an update to it, I will do a video with a link in it to give you an update to a new version of that workbook if we update it for you guys. But that is what I am going to be using as I work through my driver development with guys on our team, and also as I'm learning and building setups myself. I will be using that workbook. So I hope you guys enjoy that. We really appreciate you being here for this video. For myself, Mr. Excitement Mike Howerton, and the Admiral Tracy Rumschlag, along with everyone else here at Area 51, we appreciate you being here with these videos with us. And as always, we will see you in the next one.